Hi there, welcome to the eCommerce Nurse podcast, our 24th episode. I'm Karina McLeod, ex-Amazonian and CEO and founder of eCommerce Nurse and Vendor Society. Today, we're going to be talking about the importance of building a full funnel advertising strategy when driving growth on Amazon. We have a special guest, Benedict Turner, DSP Account Manager at Perpetua. Benedict started his career in advertising around 6 years ago and has since been involved in a meteoric rise to understanding how businesses promote themselves in several environments. Beginning his advertising career at the Telegraph and later the New York Times, his exposure to the biggest brands in the world, advertising on publishers, paved the way for understanding how advertising worked in specific motivational environments. This was all whilst the news and publisher landscape was going through a vast transformation to a subscription-first model and how to make their core product something worth paying for. In the last year, this focus has shifted to the Amazon world, where he leads on the conceptualization, activation, and delivery across the Amazon display buying network for Perpetua in Europe. Perpetua provides growth infrastructure tools to allow customers to profitably scale growth on Amazon with access to always-on optimization and advanced reporting for sponsored and DSP advertising. So hi, Benedict, a big thank you for taking the time to come on our show today. Fantastic biography there. And I'm really excited to talk to you today about a full funnel advertising strategy.
Thank you, Karina. Excited to stoke the Amazon advertising fire today amongst your network. So yeah, excited to get into it.
Awesome. So to start off then, so what would be a great idea for our listeners, because we're going to have listeners that are new to advertising and we'll also have some seasoned advertisers as well. But we talk a lot and there's a lot of talk about a full funnel strategy. So let's start off our conversation by really explaining what we mean by a full funnel advertising strategy when we talk about Amazon ads.
Sure, yeah. And I think the best way to think about this is, and the best way to explain it, the full funnel strategy and what we mean, is to translate the shopping experience into a physical bricks and mortar store. So putting ourselves in the customer's shoes, for the most part, we pretty much know exactly what we want to buy, invariably, based on needs that we want satisfying once we enter a store. However, on top of that, I think there will always be additional aisles that we go down, products that we pick up, and purchases that we make that ultimately we didn't initially intend to make. And so Amazon has had a successful rise to building out two advertising products that essentially allow advertisers to pursue, engage, and drive purchases from customers who might be at any stage of that purchase decision-making process. And so their traditional and most sophisticated advertising product, which is the sponsored products, brand, and display, is essentially their search advertising function, and it focuses on keywords to help boost your sales. We typically refer to this as more lower funnel when we talk about the full funnel approach, because essentially if you imagine once a customer inserts a keyword into that search bar, they've expressed direct interest in buying, say, candles or toilet paper. And so we want to basically allow the customer to make the sale based on an organic rank, but also building your brand to get to those top of search placements to be there when the customer is ready to make the sale. And on top of that sponsored network, you've got a great and more nuanced DSP, which essentially works on a wider display periphery, which delivers ads both on and off Amazon, and works on more behavioral intent as opposed to sort of purchase intent. That product in itself is far more full funnel because we can therefore deduce those who have looked at our products and not purchased, whilst also targeting new customers who have registered interest in, say, candles, but they haven't purchased from our brand. So we're looking to sort of generate those new customers across all stages, from awareness right the way through to purchase intent, not just on Amazon, but also off Amazon.
It's crazy, isn't it? It's crazy just to think about how Amazon advertising has just evolved in the last few years. And it's actually quite complex. It's not just about from those days of just turning on some sponsored ads on Amazon and thinking that's the way to get sales, by, just you talking about that full funnel in general, from lower, upper, there's so much more involved. And that's when it sort of comes down to really needing to strategize, right? It's so important for you to think about what you're doing when it comes to advertising. So with that in mind, and thinking about the strategic aspect of it, what would be those key points that brands should be thinking about before even or to help them get to that point of defining what their overall advertising strategy should be?
Yeah, I first of all, something to bear in mind when considering your advertising in general, not just not advertising on Amazon specifically, is that we're actually still in the first generation of marketing being a board level decision. And so what I mean by that is that a CMO, Chief Marketing Officer, is a relatively new title and responsibility to a core business growth initiative. It was traditionally a sales and marketing function, and that's completely shifted towards a far more cultural effort, i.e. what is our core belief, and let's create a product that gives the maximum value to our customers. And so whilst you have this relatively nuanced and new decision within business, commerce as a function dates back almost to the origins of religion. So you have this traditional, really, deep rooted principle of buying and selling, and also retail media. How do we function our marketing based on this traditional concept that's had this meteoric rise to now, how do we focus and shift our business? So what I would say, even before considering anything, is that even the most sophisticated commerce models are still attempting to configure their retail media into their core business offering. And so as opposed to what you should consider, it's more, how do we make this a constant year over year test and learn process that ultimately focuses on what value we're giving to our customers and how their consumption habits shift around that value. So at Perpetua, knowing all what I've just said, we don't focus on how you launch a new product or how you maximize your gains in certain moments of the year. It's more about goals. How do we focus our initiatives in a year based on how we're tracking towards new customers, or how we make our marketing in general more efficient? So there's definitely several elements to it, but I think the brands should never be they should never get themselves bogged down in where do we start. It's set yourself a goal and work towards that, because everyone's kind of going through this shift together.
And that's really, you've called out some really interesting points, and I love the kind of way that you've explained it, because it has changed. Long gone are the days where it's just all about to get that quick sale. It is, because a quick sale, great, there's that longevity, but it's all about brand building as well. And this is what we talk about as a business at eCommerce Nurse, is about the focus on, all well and good, you want to get your products to just go set your products up on Amazon or whatever other channel and sell. But there's so much more now. It is about a brand, a story, about connecting with the right audience. And it isn't just about that quick sales. So what you've just said is just completely, and what you find is that there's some businesses that have been going for years and years and years that still haven't mastered this, right? And you think that they would have mastered it, but they're from the old, kind of, not olden days as it were, but I'm trying to think of the best way to explain it, but more traditional, right? Bricks and mortar style. And a lot of businesses are going, what we're finding is through this digital transformation, whereas you've got some brands that have evolved in this world, that they've automatically kind of tuned into that way. But it's definitely a big shift for a lot of businesses.
Yeah.
So, and with that in mind, so you've got all of that, and so with these goals, so let's talk about these goals. So if you were a brand, okay, so you're going through, you want to get started, you want to start working on your ads on Amazon, and we talked about this lower funnel and this mid upper funnel. Is there a point where, is there a specific area that brands should be focusing on when they're looking at how to, they've got their budget, where to spend their budget first on Amazon?
Absolutely, yeah. What we typically want to see is someone who's kind of maxing out on that search function. How that works is that ultimately you never increase the number of people typing into that search bar if you're not doing anything about building your brand awareness.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to be ultimately a closed lid of potential customers. And whilst that's important to be there when the customer's ready to make a purchase, I think starting with a full funnel approach, looking at this holistically and saying, okay, we're doing our sponsored ads. Is there anything that we can do to sort of up level our ecosystem at which we talk to new customers? And that there's the DSP is obviously a great product within that, but the best place to start usually is to have a think about all the sort of the variables at which someone might make a sale. So that's like the scale of your category, how distinguished your brand or category is away from sort of mainstream products. Time of the year and seasonality is a big one, and also ultimately whether or not your brand is a consumable or a durable, and how quick it takes someone to basically buy your product and then try to buy the next one. The goal ultimately of all of those variables is to focus on those who have essentially picked up your products in the most recent sort of look back window, and for whatever reason they've either decided I'll put this back on the shelf or I'll go and buy it. And in a digital experience, there are lots of different ways in which you can treat customers based on their picking up and putting it down or buying. So the goal therefore is to maximize the number of people picking up your product, figure out, if it's working amongst certain new audiences, and therefore when someone does make the purchase, then you can deploy tactics like remarketing, which is a great initiative to, say if we have a candle company that we're working with, then we know that when someone buys a candle, the consumption life cycle, once someone buys, lights the candle, and then the candle's finished, might be about 70 days. So we'll give customers the opportunity to come back after day 70 to day 80, where ultimately if the product worked for them, then they'll come back and buy it straight away. So from day 80, if they haven't bought it, then we can deploy some ads to then get them to come back to your brand. And if the product that they didn't like isn't working for them, then we can also give them different like scents of that fragrance. So it's a great way to, there's so many variables at which something can be successful, but also like how that gets translated to where the full funnel approach gives value to your customers. Yeah,
definitely. And it's just so clever. I mean, it's the amount of data that's available to allow you to do that. And you get that data when I guess you do have that fuller funnel strategy, because what we find is a lot of businesses focus on the lower funnel activity, but that's not giving them any of the data. And you just mentioned something interesting in terms of there is a cap in, the number of people searching for that, searching for the product, and you're creating more of that awareness with the full funnel. And I always like to think of it as sort of bricks and mortar as well. And I'm a bit old school because my career started in bricks and mortar, is that, it's all well and good focusing once the people were in the shop and what they're looking for, but you've actually got to get them in the store in any case to want to look at your product. So hence why that being that fuller funnel, because I think so many businesses get locked into this lower funnel activity. And I think the reason is it's easier to see that return. quite quickly, but actually it's the longer term thinking and that longer term strategy that's going to help them grow as a business on a long term basis. So I think, you know, with that in mind, and I just mentioned about the return, profitability comes into always sort of a key factor when businesses are looking to go and advertise and so forth. So there are businesses that would love to do this, a full funnel strategy, you know, really get people into that funnel, start doing all the understanding what's working and then remarketing and everything. But how could businesses do that when you've got a business, or you've got a really tight budget, let's say?
Yeah, I didn't want to turn this into something juvenile, but I had to in my analogy. I used to hate broccoli when I was younger, and that sounds so far-fetched in itself, but when I was a child, broccoli would get to the table and I would think, damn it, like why do I keep having this? And it would keep coming to the table, and I would say to my mum, like, how much of this broccoli do I need to eat for you to be content? And it was almost always, you have to finish the broccoli. So the way in which that gets translated to marketing, and apologies to I'm not doing any disservice to marketing at all, or limited budgets, is that I then found out that broccoli was good for me. And whilst you need advice to give you the understanding that something might be worthwhile, if you don't like it and you're trying to sort of always think about what's the least amount I can do, it really limits the possibilities at which something could exist. And so how that then translates to Amazon specifically is whilst the core of your business should be a product that gives maximum value to your audience, ultimately it's the brand around that product that transforms the product. And businesses should be truly prepared to put money behind building that identity. So, I mean, all of that said, I think Amazon has done a great job at turning products like the DSP from a nice to have for those with deeper pockets than smaller sellers and vendors. They've managed to turn that nice to have into something that's a highly effective growth channel. And therefore, when we're setting up campaigns, that's why we like to talk about your priorities as a business, and therefore the goals that surround your priorities, as opposed to setting up a campaign. And so how you're tracking towards your sales will then take a different approach to new customers, say, because we know that the hit rate of new customers is a little bit lower than, say, existing customers. So having given all the broccoli that I have, I would always recommend maybe apportioning about 30% of your budget to that awareness, and then 70% towards the sort of lower funnel stuff, and that includes sponsored as well as DSP initiatives to maximize your sales. And that, if you have a limited budget, the 70% that's giving everything it can to your, you know, those who are ready to make the purchase, then once those metrics then help your profitability, then we can then shift more budget towards upper funnel and focusing on the wider realm. But yeah, hopefully that was understood. I don't think I've ever compared anything to broccoli, but there you go.
that is understood. And as a mother of a daughter who I have that conversation with vegetables on a daily basis, you know, yes, it is under no negotiation. I completely get it. And it's a good way of explaining it, because I think what is and how there's two ways in which you can look at working with Amazon, isn't there? There's one where you want to be a brand and you want to build a brand that actually is not dependent on the Amazon platform. You're building a brand overall, versus a number of people. How do I leverage what Amazon can give me at the lowest cost possible? But that's not going to grow your brand to where, you know, that's not really building a brand and building a brand that has scope necessarily off of Amazon, because it's, you know, as you say, it's limited. And it is, you know, as you know, important that you are and in building that brand, but that comes to a part of building that into your strategy, as in, you know, really you should be building that into your margin, right? you know, it's not just a thinking. Well, I always have this conversation. We have this conversation all the time with brands, as I'm sure you do, is that there is that point of awareness that needs, if you want to build a solid brand that is not solely dependent on the Amazon platform, and just to build a brand in general, you do need to have a percentage of marketing spent on awareness. And that awareness doesn't necessarily give you that automatic, you know, that immediate return, but it needs to be done. It's like us as a business. We have to be out there. We have to be found. Otherwise, if we're just waiting for people to convert them once they're already on our website, that, you know, it's so that awareness part is key.
Definitely completely agree with that. Even the bit, and I never want to say that, you know, pockets are endless, but, you know, if you look at the biggest brands today, say Nike, at some point they would have had to operate at a loss with their marketing to generate that brand. And so, you know, whilst we all would like to be where Nike are, I think we have to, you know, take risks in certain areas, specifically towards profitability. But yeah, appreciate that's a risky decision, but, you know, risk and reward, right?
Yeah, definitely. And that was really sort of the question that I was thinking about when I was going to ask you, was about, can you actually reach your true potential without having that full funnel advertising strategy?
Definitely. I think there's something special to be said about specifically the Amazon realm. Whilst as customers, you and I, well, for those who don't work specifically with Amazon, we typically think of Amazon as a marketplace, but it's now so much more than that. And I heard once that if you search on Google and you buy on Amazon, and so your inspiration is therefore done on Google and your purchasing is done on Amazon. But the reality of that now is that Amazon is far more than just a search engine. And for anyone who has the advantage of selling on Amazon, they have the opportunity to completely, you know, cut in half the time from inspiration to purchasing. And so the strategy is therefore, you know, we're seeing dollars move away from Google and more towards Amazon, because it's ultimately one of the most visited sites in the world. It's ultimately got the data closer to purchasing decision making, and a full funnel strategy on Amazon does everything in its power to reduce that time from inspiration to purchase, but also maximizing the lifetime value of a customer. And whilst bricks and mortar and everything of Amazon was, you know, in a way that buying and selling goes, was founded on that bricks and mortar buying and selling process, but it's just managed to streamline everything as a business into one platform. And I think there's something, you know, special about that in my opinion. But yeah, I didn't want to do any disservice to bricks and mortar, particularly as the transitions happen so quickly. And but, you know, a lot of what we talk about now is built on that, just with a lot more data to support things.
Well, and that's why so many, through the pandemic, so many bricks and mortar businesses realize if they're not online, they need to be online. And also, so they're either making sure that they have their own D2C business online, or they're actually, some businesses have even started to create their own marketplaces now. And we're seeing this evolve within certain categories as well, as people sort of, you know, the dynamics have changed, and you've got to, unfortunately, you've got to grow and evolve with it so you don't get left behind as well. And so with that in mind, how can you, how do brands measure success? Because of course it's quite easy at the bottom of the funnel to say, oh, well, success came because we got X amount of sales, but awareness is a really hard one to quantify.
It is, yeah, and that's been a problem, not just with Amazon. It's the way in which things get attributed from that awareness stage is sort of like a marketing, you know, the meteoric rise of marketing is now trying to solve that. How do we generate awareness and figure out what it's ultimately doing to our brand? But on a sort of day-to-day, there are individual metrics that you can look at. And when we talk about the full funnel, we don't typically look at, say, return on ad spend or advertising cost of sales, ROAS and ACOS, as be-all and end-all metrics. Whilst we want to be efficient with our marketing, if you're looking at ROAS in the sort of awareness stages, you'll shoot yourself in the foot, because it's something that hitting new customers and hitting that awareness need and desirability state is difficult. It's you're not going to get a sale every impression you make, and therefore we typically look at something like branded searches, or the percentage of your purchases that are coming from people who've never bought from you before. So if we're doing lots of awareness driven activities, we'd expect to see more branded searches go up. We'd expect to see the percentage of new customers of all purchases go up as well. So you can get bogged down in individual metrics quite easily, but now Amazon has been able to configure like a really solid attribution model called Amazon Marketing Cloud, which is a superb tool that's anyone who has the advantage of being on this platform is certainly being able to see how the full funnel is working. And how it works is essentially it manages to prove individual customer user behavior attributes to ultimately making a sale. So an example would be a customer sees an ad via their Fire Stick when they're streaming on Prime Video in their homes, in their living room. That data then gets pooled and it gets accessed across the DSP, and now we then open up into, say, mobile apps or off Amazon placement, which enables the customer to then get retargeted. Now they've seen the ad on their Fire Stick, and once that's happened a couple of times, once someone is ready to make a purchase, then they go onto Amazon and say, I've seen a couple of candles floating about, but I've seen this specific brand. I'm going to search for it on Amazon, and then I'm going to make the sale. And the ad that I click on is a sponsored ad. And so Amazon Marketing Cloud looks at the whole ecosystem at which a customer would come across your brand and all of your initiatives, to be able to say, okay, whilst our sponsored is getting all the attribution for sales, ultimately it's the Fire Stick and the DSP that did, all the legwork in getting the awareness out there. So yeah, that's a great sort of business intelligence unit that we've been able to justify far more sales driven initiative. Sorry.
It's amazing, just the amount of data and just seeing that, because you're right. I know from many years ago of working with DSP and sponsored ads. Sponsored ads is almost like gets everything, doesn't it? It's it gets all the limelight, as it were, and some of it can be coming from DSP. In terms of then, it's really great to be able to talk about this full funnel, because it really does highlight that, I've had so many conversations where people are like, oh, we don't want to invest in DSP, the return isn't there. But actually, it's about how you see the return. And we've spoken about the awareness. And just because you see a very obvious return in sponsored ads doesn't mean that the DSP and the upper funnel activity isn't working. And I think, what you've talked about really sort of highlights that, and that whole brand building and how you really need to incorporate. It's not just about almost that lower part of just, you've got to think about building an overall strategy for the long term for your brand. So I always say before signing off, and this has been fantastic to really get that understanding of all levels of the funnel, I'd always have one last question. My last question for you, it would be, if you were to give a tip to someone, because probably a lot of listeners are coming from sponsored ads, ACOS, that sort of focus. And they're thinking, all right, actually, I do need to start working on the awareness aspect. What tip would it be if they were starting to think about jumping into Amazon DSP?
In in true commerce style, I had to go for 2 for 1, simply because the DSP is so nuanced. I can't boil it down to just one. Yeah, there's broccoli and 2 for 1. That's the summary of today. But I'd say the two go hand in hand. So firstly, set your expectations, and that, Karina, you hit the nail on the head. Be goal focused and not about product focused. We see a lot of brands trying to sort of capitalize on big moments of the year like Prime Day and Black Friday, Cyber Monday, yet they never set out their expectations of what they wanted to achieve in that moment. And so when it's all over, they're thinking, well, how do we be successful now? How do we make that even better next year? So set your expectations early and be goal focused. But on top of that, you have to find the right balance between automation and control. There's a huge amount of voluminous data available to everyone, that a lot of that can get automated, and so therefore you can spend a lot less time on getting your head, down into all of the several data points that you can have access to. And then therefore, once that's automated, all that data, you can then control your goals and how that ultimately is working towards your brand building. So it's something that trying to relinquish that control is a pain point that we're seeing, but definitely a tip to sort of like let go, let automation, and focus on control for yourself. But thank you very much. It's been a great to chat with you about all the weird and wonderful things on Amazon.
Yeah, definitely. And there's just constantly more and more new features, and it's just evolving. And I find it really exciting. I mean, I've been in the Amazon space for, nearly 17 years, and just seeing it evolve is just crazy. And I don't think anyone would have thought it would be where it is, especially on the advertising side, which is incredible. So thank you so much, Ben. You've been an amazing guest today, and for sharing your top tips with our listeners. And if you do want to learn more about how you can use Perpetua to optimize and automate your advertising, you can contact them via the link in the description of the podcast. Also, if you need any support managing your advertising, eCommerce Nurse is there to support you in building and driving your full funnel strategy and your brand strategy overall. So if you do want to find out more, you know who to contact. So it would be Ben at Perpetua. And as I said, details will be in the description of the podcast. So thank you ever so much, Ben. And
thank you, Karina.
And thank you everyone for listening.